And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Welcome to our summary of day 2 of the first test between New Zealand and England from Mount Maunganui in New Zealand. It's been, I think it's fair to say, an eventful day. And to summarize it, to give you a feel of what went on, I'm joined today by the man from the Wirral. The Merseyside's getting good run early on here. Alan Hotckiss. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Jez. Thanks for having me.
So, just to start with, could you give a very brief, and by brief I don't mean Gary Naylor brief, I mean Alan Hotchkiss brief, summary of what happened today?
Start the clock.
Going.
New Zealand started the day at 37 for 3 and soon reached 83 for 5, with the fall of a couple of wickets. Wagner out, Mitchell out, not playing a shot. Then the counter-attack came. First from Conway, and then from a brilliant century by Tom Blundell, carefully marshalling the troops towards the end of the day. Frustrating England, reducing the deficit to 19 runs by the end of the first innings. Duckett and Crawley looked good, but both departed, both slightly disappointingly. Amazingly, Stuart Broad has been sent in as night watchman, and it is only through the luck of whatever god you want to pray to that England aren't 3 down, maybe more down. But England are still, on the balance of play after 2 days, marginally ahead.
So what's the final score?
Final score, 79 for 2 at the close, a lead of 98 runs.
Thank you. You got it spot on a minute, which is pretty good. 4.5 minutes less than Gary. So, I want to congratulate you, first of all, for your brevity. It's an interesting discipline, that. We started off the day, it was bright and sunny in Mount Maunganui, and stayed clear the whole day. What was your view of the way the day progressed? England's bowling, it's open to some criticism, I suspect, in relation to what happened.
I think the first thing we've got to say is, from an atmospherics point of view, there was no assistance.
Yeah.
So nothing off the pitch, nothing in the air, which was kind of a hallmark of how day 1 went. I think that certainly beginning with Stokes' spell right at the beginning of the second session, there seemed to be a mindset which was to bowl the ball short.
Yep.
From the pace bowlers. And in a mindset, it was and strangely, because we kind of, even though Bazball as a concept is only 10 tests old, there is this idea that they're all flexible, adaptable, willing to change. They were pretty pig-headed about that whole thing. And the pitch seemed that there were no demons in the pitch, nothing moving or deviating. It was easy to play back in the crease and to play the ball short. And I think that essentially England's bowling played into the hands of New Zealand's fight back. I think that New Zealand played really well, and there's a real danger with the way that the cricketing world sees England men's test team at the moment, that there's only one team in it, and we might forget that New Zealand are actually pretty damn good at this test cricket stuff. But I can't help but think that England's bowling let New Zealand off the hook.
Yeah. When Stokes came on to bowl, which wasn't till quite late in the day, his first 2 overs entirely consisted of short balls.
Yeah.
And it just seemed very unimaginative approach to dealing with things. Eventually, he did get someone out with the short ball.
He got Conway out, and Conway was set in the 70s when he got out. And sometimes what happens, I think, with people in general, is that even if you're doing the wrong thing, if you get a little bit of success by doing the wrong thing, all it does is it emboldens you to do more of the wrong thing going forward.
So are you saying then that he should make sure he bowls 2 no balls every over so he gets the wicket on the 8th ball like he did today?
There's something to be said about it. I mean, since I mean, not just as Stokes the captain, but certainly you can go back to the beginning of the act tour. He has a real problem with no balls.
Yes.
It's a pretty undisciplined problem for him to have. I get that you kind of strive for the extra length, but or put a bit of extra effort in. But I mean, come on, change your runner.
Yep. It constantly angers me, the number of no balls that are bowled. It just seems so unnecessary. And one of the things that leads to it, I think, is bowling in the nets. People just don't respect the line at all when they're doing net bowling, and it breeds bad habits.
It's something that's completely within the control of the bowler to eradicate.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? You can be unlucky with certain other aspects of how bowling goes and how you might be measured, but a no ball is completely within your own control. Yep. So control it.
Yeah, well, we'll keep hoping.
I know it's not going to be in any coaching manuals. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like it's something that can be fixed with a bit of effort.
Yes,
not a lot, just a bit.
Indeed. So, do you want to say a couple of words about Tom Blundell?
It was just a marvelous. It was a marvelously paced innings, I thought. I thought that you're coming in, and it's 83 for 5, and you're looking at this and it's like, really, oh wow, okay, what's a good score at 83 for 5? I thought that he batted at a reasonable considered pace, not a baseball pace, but I mean, he scored his century up about 170, 180 balls,
something like that. Yes.
I think that he was given a steady diet of short pitch bowling, and if these players are all good enough that if they know more or less what's coming, then they can prepare for it. They can find the gaps in the field, and they kept the scoreboard ticking over. I mean, there's a few runs at the end which are a bit edgy over slip because he's trying to hoik the ball away because he's trying to get as many runs as he can, batting with the tail. But I thought he marshalled those troops pretty well. I was very impressed with him when he came to England, and for those couple of tests, batted really well with Mitchell. I think it's a real, it's his 3rd century, I think, in Test match cricket, and it's maybe a real coming out party for him.
Yes.
I was very, very impressed.
Well, I mean, coming in at number 7 and making that century was key to their turnaround. They made 83 runs for the first 5 wickets. They made 223 runs for their second 5 wickets, which is a remarkable reverse split. And the support he had from some of the tail enders was great, but between them they only made 40 runs. So he really showed how it could be done without going baseball, if I may say so. The England tail, by contrast, were abysmal yesterday.
There is a mistake that we could make with regards to baseball, which is that we have all assumed that England were happy with the way that their first innings went. 325 for 9 declared, less than 60 overs. Let's get them in. I think that privately, and I think inside the dressing room, I think that Stokes and McCullum would turn round, maybe not to give any indication to the outside world, but they know they've left runs on the board. They've left runs out there. They know that that it's not gone the way that they thought it would. There are disappointing dismissals. But we have this tendency to currently, at the moment, turn around and go, well, whatever you think and whatever you decide must be brilliant.
Yep.
It must be new, and therefore it's original and it's new and it's brilliant because you thought of it and you are Bazball. And, you know, there's a few decisions that we might talk about before we close today.
Well, I was just going
that might indicate that, you know, the lights were on, but I don't think the hamster was at the wheel.
Well, that's right. I was just going to say, so England's second innings, Crawley and Duckett opening. The expectation was that Crawley would go really cheaply, and in fact, Duckett was the first to go. Crawley went, his average in Test matches is 28. He went for 28 with a really horrible swipe at a short ball outside the off stump. I don't think he did himself any favours with that. But just describe what happened when he was out.
Well, while so play went as late as it could do, didn't it? It went to 9:30 local time, and there was some shots of the dressing room, and you know, you could see that the senior players are chewing the fat, and McCullum looks like he hasn't got a care in the world, and we notice that Stuart Broad is stood up. He's got his sun hat on, and he moves a hand, and he's wearing his cricket gloves. And all we could assume is that there's been some kind of joke. And surely not Stuart Broad, who is, you know, let's be kind about his batting career and say that he is erratically offensive. But, you know, because, you know, he's not, you know, there are expectations of what you want a night watchman to be and how you want a night watchman to bat. And Stuart Broad, in his career, especially the latter part of his career, ticks zero of those boxes about the expectation of a night watchman batsman.
Well, to protect the established batter, basically.
Oh, yeah. And also to prevent the fall of more wickets, especially your own. You know, I mean, we appreciate that you'll get out maybe quickly in the morning, but stay in there.
Yeah.
And the feeling of horror and dread to see him come out to the crease, because, you know, I mean, he's had a long career and a successful career as a bowler, but he might be irrationally confident as a batsman. I'm trying to choose my words carefully about the idea of irrational confidence. But you could tell that from the first ball, because we're like, okay, maybe he's gone out with specific instructions, and with the first ball, he's stepping down the track to Tim Southey, you know, and you're like, this is awful.
And then what happened with the second ball?
Well, Kugelheim was the person who was bowled. Yeah. Kugelheim was the person who got the second win. And with the second ball, cross bat shot, top edge, as we might like to say if we're commentating, it goes up, but it doesn't go out. It's got the height, but it hasn't got the distance. And what we're expecting to see is that it falls comfortably and safely into the hands of the wicketkeeper, because the wicketkeeper's got the gloves.
Yep.
But Kugelheim has effectively intimidated the wicketkeeper. They both look at each other. They both stop running. They both assume somebody else is going to do something. Obviously, nobody calls anything, because the ball comes down from as high as Mount Mantanuki, and it comes down and it just hits the floor. And no, there is no one within 5 yards of the ball.
And yet it was an easy catch.
Any you know, decent club cricketer, wicket keeper, and I'm not just talking about first team, second team, third team, would easily pounce that catch. Easily. It's the type of thing. It's practice.
So Broad should have been out second ball as night watchman, but he did survive, did he not?
He did survive. There was one, you know, he's 6 not out. There was one particularly ugly hoik which he decided he wasn't going to watch hit the boundary, and then kind of gave some dismissive hand-wavy gesture towards Ollie Pope as the senior batsman.
And he also managed a 7-minute change of helmets when he was hit very gently on the...
Well, the thing that hit him on the helmet was his hand. He was fending off a short ball, and he took one hand off it. Because originally I thought he was getting physio treatment because it hit him on the hand. But he's moved the hand off the bat and he's hit himself on the helmet. And the damage to which he might claim that the helmet suffered seems disproportionate to the amount of force that went into the helmet, shall we say?
Yeah.
It looked slightly disingenuous.
So what does that all say about the Stokes-McCallum genius decision-making process?
That you can be too outcome dependent when it comes to decision making. If you judge yourself purely on results, you might look at that and go, Stuart Broad was not out at the end of it. Because that will, if you just read books and if you just look at reports, Stuart Broad was a not out batsman at the end of the day. So you might turn around and go, it might not have been my first choice. Jack Leach might have been my first choice, but he must have played it out to the end of the day. But those of us who were witnesses knows that was, there's no other word of saying it, a decision made by somebody who had vacated their brain. I cannot begin to think about what you have to think about and how you think about what's going on to think that is the best decision to make.
I can tell you, dear listeners, that Al said on air that he had not been so angry for as long as he can remember, but that was the impact of it.
because what you're watching is, you can almost have a certain amount of sympathy for Broad because Broad's been sent out to fail.
Yeah.
Because you're asking him to do a job that he neither has the skill or the wit and comprehension to be able to complete.
Yeah,
that's a Sisyphean task.
Absolutely. So we're over the time I'd set for this again, I'm afraid. But there are just a couple of other things I want to mention today. The gorilla of today for me today was Hendo. Hendo got back his rantability. He was grumpy and pissed off early in the day.
From the get-go.
Absolutely. And that's the Hendo we love and know. And we want to see more of those Hendo rants because that's what sustains us and keeps us on our toes.
Well, absolutely.
Definitely the gorilla of the day.
If you want to hear half an hour of absolute proof that England score too many runs too quickly in Test cricket, Hendo is your man.
Yeah.
Hendo is your man.
That was wonderful stuff. The other thing is the tweet of the day wasn't actually on our timeline, but it was a retweet from Alison Mitchell, which promoted a lot of discussion, where she'd been told that at Mount Maunganui that you could get ice cream behind the main stand, which included the flavour of fish and tartar sauce, which really was quite stomach churning, but it did wake up a lot of our tweeters, and I must say we had a lot of fun with that. Anyhow, I need to cut it there just to say at the end of the day, England are 79 for 2 with a lead of 98 runs, so reasonably well placed, but not by any means in control of this match, but strongly placed, I think is fair to say.
Both sides can win it.
Yeah, and that's what we like going into day 3.
It's all you want. If you're a fan of Test cricket, it's all you want.
So I just want to say thank you very much to you, Al, and to our patrons who've supported us through all of this. And if you want to support us, please consider becoming a Patreon. The link is on the screen. But also, even if you don't, feel free to comment below or on Twitter and like and subscribe to the Guerilla Cricket channel. Thank you all very much for being with us tonight, and we'll catch you with the next report tomorrow.
And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened the night when things transpire.